Now, if I come over to the right side of my interface here, we talked about some of these tabs. We have the Modeling Toolkit, the Attribute Editor, and Tool Settings. And these are nicely stashed in this little window. And you really only need these one at a time, so it's nice that they're hidden away. We can talk about each one individually. The Modeling Toolkit is great. It's a relatively new addition to Maya, and it comes up when you have selected the Modeling Standard Workspace. It's nicely hidden here, and it gives you some of the most commonly used tools and functions that you'll want easy access to when you are modeling. The attribute editor, as we've talked about, only gets activated when something's selected, and it gives you options for that object. Whatever is selected, you have some attributes for that. So since I haven't really altered this cylinder, I still have options to change the proportions, the scale, the number of subdivisions on the height around the axis, and then the cap. So there's different subdivisions for each different type of primitive. They're usually under this polytorus or polysphere or polycone tab here. I'll just play with some of those. These are fun to experiment with. The ones I use most on a torus would be the radius, the section radius, the subdivisions, and the subdivisions on the height. All right, under tool settings, you'll get different options depending on which tool you have. So as long as I have the Move tool selected, you see under the tool settings, I get options related to the Move tool. When I go to the Select tool, that changes. It's the same tab, but I'm now only going to see tool settings for the Select tool. If I go to the Rotate tool, again, it changes. Or the Scale tool, it changes a little bit. The options for each tool are a little bit different. You'll notice that. So tool settings is a good way to tweak the way that your tool works. And we can delve into some of this and give you some ideas of how to adjust the tools. Another tab I like to have is the channel blocks and layer editor. We'll get to layers in a little bit, but I like to have that open, and if it's not nested already, I'm going to nest it here as another tab. So if I can't see all those tabs, I can click these small arrows and move through those tabs. I can also nest the tabs over to the right here to where they sit on the right side of this window. Now I've moved all these tabs over to the right rather than having them above here. It doesn't really matter as long as you have access to them. You can reorganize them and really put them where you need them to be. Inside each viewport, you have these options that are the same, but they can be customized for that specific viewport. So let's talk about some of those. Under the viewport, you have a view menu here that allows you to access different ways of viewing the scene. Shading allows you to see your geometry in different ways. I think we talked about this in a previous video, but here you have these options that are represented by the hotkeys. Number 4 is wireframe, 5 is smooth shade all. Another option here is X-ray, which gives you a semi-transparent appearance. It's shaded, but you can still kind of see through things. You also have a lighting drop-down to use different kinds of lighting in the scene. We can skip these for now, but when we go to panels, you have these options for different views. So if you have a camera in the scene, like I do, you can select that and you can see the scene from the perspective of that camera. Let me go back to my default perspective camera, which is PERSP. If I wanted to create a new view, I could do that here. I also can go to orthographic views and change those. But remember, you have these alternate orthographic views in the 4-up panel layout that you can get there that way. So I actually just want to go back to my perspective view and use that. But just know that you can change the view depending on which camera you have or want to use in the scene. Another thing you need to know is how to change your working units in Maya. You can do that by going to Windows, Settings, Preferences, Preferences. Now here is where you find basically all the preferences in Maya. For our working units, we're going to go to Settings in this list here, and under Working Units, we have Linear, and then by default it's on centimeter. So that means that each one of these squares on the grid represents 1 centimeter. You might want to check that if you're planning to do any 3D printing or export a model into another 3D app that might have different working units. You want to get them all working together so a centimeter is a centimeter is a centimeter in the different apps. You can also choose meters or inches or feet or yards or any unit that you want. Centimeter is usually the most common one. So it's good to check that, and you can save whatever changes you made by clicking the Save button.